Canadian press. Can you give us a sense of the tone that Donald Trump struck with you on the call? Did he call us the 51st state? Did he call you the governor, or was he more respectful like he was in the Oval Office today?
It was, as I say, it was a very productive. His words very productive, mine very constructive. They mean the same thing. It was a very cordial, substantive call. This was a call between two leaders of their respective governments, between two sovereign nations. It was a call focused on, the spirit of the call was both cordial and focused on making progress. And that's why you had several things. One is an agreement, which is what I wanted, what I think he wanted as well. And I've been clear about this for a number of weeks, to have a comprehensive discussion on our broader economic and security partnership. We agreed to that. As also to have intensive discussions between our ministers, including obviously the Minister of Foreign Affairs, who kindly is here, and who can withstand absolutely anything, including this. Elle travaille sans relâche.
She's working tirelessly. She's working all the time.
Her counterpart, Secretary Rubio. So those discussions will go on intensively. So positive, cordial, constructive, focused on action, exactly what we want.
You've said that you wouldn't sit down with Mr. Trump and talk to him unless he respects Canada's sovereignty. Did you convey that to the president today? And if so, what did he say?
The president respected Canada's sovereignty today, both in his private and public comments.
He said, again, yes, constructive progress, the beginning of negotiations with the United States on a new partnership, and we'll see where that goes. He said supply management is off the table. And he described the tone of the meeting as cordial, substantive, and action-focused. The CBC's Karina Roman has been following along with me. I think I have some of the main points, and I don't want to steal all of it from you. I mean, come on. What am I here for?
You did cover some of the highlights.
Okay.
I guess I would add that not only did he give some tangibles on supply management being off the table, that it won't be part of a discussion in any negotiation, but also that he did not hear from Donald Trump that there's a step back or a rollback of the auto tariffs announced, or any other tariffs, that was not the result of the phone call. So we got clarity on that as well. And that's where he also went on to, I guess, try and temper expectations, saying this is just the beginning. But for some, that will be a disappointment, because we've kind of gotten used to the calls being about temporary pauses and the like, and that clearly isn't what came out of this call. It was interesting to me how he talked about how, regardless, the economy will be transformed, whether it's because of what the U.S. is doing or because of what Canada decides to do for itself. The global economies are going to be changing, and so will Canada, because the U.S. goal and Donald Trump's goal is to transform the U.S. economy, and that will affect us. And that I got a sense what he's trying to say about the whole integration is that's no longer our goal. That was seen as a principle behind bettering the economies of both countries. Since it's clearly not a principle that Donald Trump agrees with, then that's obviously no longer going to be the goal for Canada either. I thought his answers to questions about whether he was pretentious in setting up a negotiation for after the election, where he made a joke that Monsieur Blanc, I don't know whether people will find it funny or not, but Monsieur Blanchet will not be that person because, and Monsieur Blanchet would agree, he will never be Prime Minister because he is the leader of the Bloc Québécois, not a national party. But it did sound to me, if you think about the complaints from Monsieur Blanchet, that, you know, he's not consulting with the leaders of the other parties and sort of doing everything from on high. He did talk about his call with the premiers. To him, clearly, that is who he needs to be consulting with and talking talking to in terms of the way forward and how Canada should respond to these threats. The other tangible, and you might have mentioned this, Andrew, is that if and when there is a renegotiation of our trade relationship and our economic and security relationship, would Mexico be a part of that? He said that would be Canada's preference, that it would be a three-way discussion, not a two-way discussion. If you hadn't mentioned that, I did also think that was interesting as well. There is more, but I will stop for now.
No, that's good. I did not mention that, but that also stood out for me. And also, he talked about how the president respected the sovereignty of our country privately and publicly, and then he said, okay, that's it. I'm tempted to add more, and then he laughed, and I'm tempted to wonder more of what he wanted to add, but that
obviously, yes.
Yeah, but let's talk a little bit about what Donald Trump. So Mark Carney. That's what his take on the whole call was. But let's listen to what Donald Trump had to say about the call.
Well, absolutely. But we had a very good conversation. Mark called me today at 10 o'clock. We put out a statement. We had a very, very good talk. He's going through an election now, and we'll see what happens. But we have Liberation Day, as you know, on April 2nd, and I'm not referring to Canada, but many countries have taken advantage of us.
And I should just note the absolutely at the beginning of that was a reporter's question on whether tariffs are coming against Canada, and the answer, absolutely. So what that looks like. So what should we make of this moment that we are in this U.S.-Canada trade war at the beginning of a Canadian election campaign?
Well, if to be believed Mark Carney, there's no reason to doubt that what he says in his statement and there in person was that he also told Donald Trump in response to the April 2nd tariff still being on, that Canada is still prepared to retaliate with its own tariffs. So when you look at the tape of Donald Trump and you hear from Mark Carney, they don't seem to be saying things that conflict with each other, at least yet. We have run into that in the past where the readouts or the interpretation of what the call was like or the meeting was like, and not just between Canada and the U.S. We've seen that in other meetings Donald Trump has had where the interpretation seemed very different. They took different things away from the meeting. But for today, this seems like they're somewhat on the same page in how they perceive the meeting. What we don't know is when Mark Carney says that his impression is that Donald Trump has sort of a new impression of how strong Canada is, that perhaps he underestimated Canada before and now he isn't. I don't think we have any way of verifying that without asking Donald Trump himself, but perhaps that's a positive sign if true. And for now, we have a president not mentioning Canada being the cherished 51st state going forward, either publicly or, according to Mark Carney, privately. So I suppose that is progress as well. But I think no one feels like there's a big sigh of relief. There's a little sigh of relief that today seemed to go well. But I think we're all a little bit on tenterhooks about whether or not we'll be surprised with something at another point that will just revert back to where we were before. And that's all this is really a wait and see kind of situation.
Karina, thank you. The CBC's Karina Roman reporting live from Ottawa.